which ultimately one day we'd probably like to do. In the meantime, though, before we have all those resources, we have to make priorities, and so we're recommending a priority be placed on the 20,000 youth who are at highest risk of violence, generally through getting involved in crimes, but sometimes because of the severity of their illness. And 900 of those youth, ages 18 or younger, generally between 15 and 18, every year develop a new psychotic disorder that puts them at a 15 times higher risk to commit homicide if not treated. Now, we're not going to stop school violence by treating these young folks. We're not going to stop violence. But what we can do is dramatically reduce the risk of these young people committing violence. And I think that's the kind of incremental positive change that we need to be looking at when these sorts of things happen in terms of the mental health component.
Sir Whitmire has a question.
Yes, please,
Quick
sir.
question. If we're going to appreciate your comments like we want to, could you describe where you arrived at your conclusions?
Absolutely.
I mean, the numbers you're throwing, I mean, I can take them for face value, or you
Yeah.
can give us a little more in depth how you arrived at these numbers. I mean, 900?
How do you get
How do you prescribe that?
Yes, thank you, Senator. I appreciate the opportunity to explain that. So, you know, for things like cancer, we actually have registries where we track the number of people who have cancer. When my mom got breast cancer, her name got put in a registry of women with breast cancer. With mental illness, we don't have that. I mean, we do track people that go into the jail, but we don't have an overall list of people where we track who has mental illness. So what we have to rely on are very large-scale epidemiological studies where people go out and they interview tens of thousands of people. And so they do this, and they're able to look at that across race, ethnicity, income, gender, and predict how many of those folks are going to develop depression, how many are going to develop psychosis, how many are going to develop bipolar disorder, all the different mental illnesses, post-traumatic stress disorder. And we have pretty good estimates of that. I mean, they're not, you know, rounding error, but they're pretty close. So when we drill in on the number of people who have early psychosis, those are studies where they've gone out into different communities. They began actually in England. The first places they did it actually was Ireland. They went out in rural Ireland and they interviewed everybody because they could find everybody, and they figured out over a period of several years how many developed a psychosis. Since then, they've replicated those in the United States, and they found very similar numbers. That every year, a very small percentage of people have a psychosis, which is having a hallucination, a delusion, believing, you're, Christ, or being followed by the CIA, that you're in danger. So that estimate of 900 is based on really sound science, replicated multiple times. But is it exactly 900? No. I mean, it's maybe 700, maybe it's 1,100, but it's not 2,000 and it's not 5,000. It's somewhere around 1,000 young people. And that's a chunk of the people who develop a psychosis every year. There's about 3,000 Texans total, based on these same estimates, between the ages of 15 and 35 who develop a psychosis. Most do it earlier on. So about 900, a third of those 3,000 are going to do it before they reach adulthood. So these are estimates. They're based on the best science we have. We are sure that the numbers are not twice that, but it's not an exact precise number. Is that helpful, sir?
Yeah, it's just, we sit up here and let folks just throw numbers at us and without wondering the true credibility. And I mean, I thought you were fixing to let us, that you did your study in England, but at least you brought the England study best practices here. So it's just through interviewing and like the 20,000, same method, huh? You just go out in school populations and.
Actually, that estimate comes from a different set of studies. So what happened there was there have been several states, Massachusetts, Washington, California, Wisconsin, that have had these large lawsuits, class action lawsuits, where the court ordered them to serve every child who was at high risk for being placed out of their home because of their behavior. So what they went in is they employed lots of expert witnesses. The court supervised the process, and we took the estimates that were used in Massachusetts, Washington, California, and Wisconsin around these lawsuits, and we haven't had one of these yet in Texas. So we don't have one in Texas.
You take those studies and try to apply them to the Texas population?
Because these are about biologically based things, so we believe the biology is pretty similar in children in America, that there's not dramatic differences in the presentation of psychosis, bipolar disorder, the severe mental illnesses. Now, other things, there absolutely are some differences. There's differences in suicide rates, there's differences in school performance, there's differences in things like that.
Because we have social, economic, we have diversity issues that you're not going to find in the other states. And so
we adjust the numbers for that.
Okay.
We take them,
I don't believe the point, but it's just,
Yeah.
so concerning to me that you sit there and act like a matter of fact that there's about 900 students that are 15 times more likely.
Yeah.
And for you, I just sit here and think, who came up with those numbers? Because
Well-
it matters the credibility
Yeah.
of your projections.
Absolutely, and we're happy to share, Senator, the studies, share them with staff and send them in. I will tell you that you're right to be skeptical of the precision. I totally agree with you. The precision, I'm trying to be clear in terms of making the precise estimate. These are estimates, but I will tell you it's not double that. It's not 100,000. It's not 50,000. It's somewhere in that 20,000 range. It's maybe 15, maybe it's 35,000, but it's not a million.
For sure.
Yeah. Well, but I mean, there are a million, I guess my point is there are a million, there's about 2 million kids, and this is pretty well documented. We've got good Texas evidence on this, who every year are gonna have some level of mental health disorder. But I mean, I totally agree with this, the point about the precision is I'm overstating the precision.
Sarah Huffman has a question.
I couldn't agree more with Senator Whitmire. It's very important to understand what numbers we're talking about as we try to find solutions as we go through this process. So just so I'm clear, because you went, and I know you have a limited amount of time, so I'm not understanding you have to go through it quickly, but just again, I think it's important to drill down on this. So when you talk about 900 mas or menos, as they say,
Yes.
you are talking about psychotic disorders, or these are the more severely ill, right?
Correct.
And these are the ones that may have a slight more risk to commit violence, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, I would say a significant.
Significant,
higher risk.
okay.
Untreated. Now, treated is a different state, but
Okay.
untreated, yeah, absolutely.
And then when we talk about mild to moderate mental illness, you talked about, is that the 20,000 number?
Well, no, the 20,000 is actually part of the severest group.
Okay, so,
The 900 is sort of, we kind of, and we have other subgroups in the 20,000 that we
Okay.
could talk about. But we tried to slice out the
Okay.
highest risk
Okay.
for y'all to consider as you prioritize different
Okay.
things. There
But-
are other segments.
okay, so maybe 19,000 just with some kind of moderate,
No, severe. The 19 are very severe. They're just not.
19
The
or
19,000 are very severe. They
Okay.
just don't have a psychosis. So to give you.
Okay, gotcha.
Do you want me,
Okay.
should I give you an example of the
Please,
20?
yeah,
So,
sure.
and the other 19,000-ish that are in there, plus or minus, young people who've been exposed to trauma, who've had a lot of trauma in their lives,
Mm-hmm.
who are not getting successful treatment for that. We know it's 8 years.
Maybe
before
sexually
people get
abused
treatment for
children,
sexual
something
abuse.
like that.
Anger, not able to really control kind of their emotions and feelings,
Mm-hmm.
and they start getting in trouble. They feel better when they're the victimizer, and they get into violent cycles, and then they can hurt folks. And most of the time, they're not going to go kill a large number of people. They're going to hurt somebody while committing a crime.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to brutalize someone. That's the kind of violence that 20,000 is at highest risk for.
okay. But what are you proposing that we focus, kind of laser in on that 900 to 1,000-ish group because of, I guess, limited resource, whatever you're thinking, what we can do more quickly? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and I think the biggest point I'm making is that we need to not talk about mental health as a monolith. That we
Okay.
need to talk about the specific disorders that require different treatments